Hello and welcome to Fix the Senate Now, brought to you by Democracy Initiative. I am Reverend Dr. Stephanie Rose Spalding, the founder of Truth and Conciliation Commission, as well as your MC for this session of the Teach In today. We are beyond excited to have you all here this afternoon, or depending on what time zone you're in, this day with us. We have so much information that we are communicating, translating, and sharing with all of you all out here in Cyberland with us. It's my pleasure to introduce the trainer extraordinaire. She is the movement building coordinator for Democracy Initiative. And she's just an amazing human being. Like, this Black girl magic that's coming your way is just awesome. Brittany Baxter is a Maryland-based consultant and organizer, as well as the principal consultant for Ladders to Success, LLC. She has worked with a number of organizations across the country. Recently, she organized in various capacities with the Broward County for coordinated efforts to elect Andrew Gillum, and partnership with the Wellstone Action Program, or formerly Wellstone Action, to provide training for progressive Democrats, their campaign managers, and grassroots organizers to run and win effective campaigns. We need you all to run and win effective campaigns. And so you need the expertise of someone like Brittany Baxter. She is also a trainer for the National Democratic Training Committee. She is a strong supporter of labor and a former AFT organizer for NYSUT. She is committed to the fight for equity for all, and she says she stands with the poor, people of color, LGBTQ folks, immigrants, and organized labor, because our liberation is bound together. Again, it is my pleasure to introduce to you, for this segment, Brittany Baxter.
Thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Spalding. Your words are too kind. I hope that I can live up to the hype. So again, welcome to Fixing the Senate Now, folks, why Senate governance matters to all of us. As the Reverend Doctor said, my name is Brittany Baxter. I'm the Training and Movement Building Coordinator for the Democracy Initiative, and I am so excited to be here with you all today. So today we're going to talk about the filibuster in Senate governance and why you should care about it, because as unsexy as it sounds, it really is an issue that impacts all of the work that we all do, right? We all come to this movement because of issues that we want to transform and move forward to improve the lives of the people that we love and care about, and folks that we may never meet, right? But the filibuster has long been the roadblock in this work that we all come together to advance. So we're going to talk a little bit about why that is. We're going to talk about the history behind it and how we're going to defeat this thing together. So I'm excited for you all to come on this journey with me. So let's go ahead and just jump in a bit. So before we get started on the filibuster, I want to talk to you all a little bit about the organization that I have spent the last 2 years working with, the Democracy Initiative Education Fund, right? The work that we do is to bring all of the folks in this movement together to talk about democracy and from an intersectional lens, right? We often think of democracy as this abstract idea, right? But the reality is democracy manifests in our lives in very different ways, depending on the systems of oppression that impact us. And so what we do at the Democracy Initiative is we bring together the coalition of the willing, of 45 million strong folks who want to make our government work for us, who want to protect and expand our voting rights with the goal of achieving 75% participation in the democratic process, right? And we want to get big money out of politics, right? We've long standed with the folks who are fighting to end Citizens United and to repeal other laws that allow corporations to control and own our elections. And then we want to achieve fair representation, right? At the DI, we have a saying, the most oppressed lead the best. And we recognize that those who are the furthest removed from our democracy are the ones with the answers for how we create a democracy that is rooted in liberty and justice for all of us, right? So Would love for you all to just check us out. If you want to learn more, we offer trainings. We engage with anyone who wants to get a deeper understanding of democracy, reform, work, and how we can engage and shift the space to be more inclusive. So feel free to reach out to us at any time. We're around, and we're happy to bring new folks into the democracy fight. Now that you have an understanding about my org and the work that we do and how we come to this work, let's dive in. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about, we're just going to really do a deep dive into the basics of the filibuster and just like the infrastructure, how it plays a role in the machine that is Congress, right? So first, we're going to do a quick icebreaker. I want to get a sense of folks. I want you all to share what inspires your activism, right? After that, we're going to talk a little bit about governance, what it actually means. And then we'll dive into the filibuster itself, right? The big bad wolf in the room that we're all coming together to learn about. And then we'll shift to why democracy matters and why it's so crucial to making sure that Senate governance is driven by our democratic values, right? After that, we're going to share some rules for effective conversations with you all. And then we want you all to go out and practice these rules later, right? And then we'll talk about how all of this leads to you stepping up and into the fight in new and interesting ways. Because all of this, it doesn't matter if we're not sharing that information with folks who don't have access to these spaces and engaging the everyday people whose lives are most impacted by this work. So let's go ahead and dive in. And before we dive in, I do want to apologize. Y'all, I'm from New York. I'm from the western part of New York. And so I speak fast and slow at the same time. So I'll try to just modulate that for y'all because I know I have a tendency to do the things. So if you all are ready, let's dive in. So first, we really just want to get a deeper understanding of what governance means and why it matters, so that you have a framing of how deeply broken the Senate is. We all know, even just from this last 4 years, how dysfunctional the Senate has been, even witnessing the dysfunction of the Senate under President Obama, right? But it goes much deeper than that. And so we're going to just touch on that really quickly so that folks we have the same foundational understanding of what we're dealing with, right? Because we can't defeat a monster if we don't know its weaknesses and how it functions. Okay? Once we get a deeper understanding of what governance means, then we're going to shift to understanding the filibuster itself, right? It like many things in this country, like many tools of oppression that exist in this country, is rooted in white supremacy. And then we're going to talk about its evolution to how it's used today to block needed change that has the public support and bipartisan support. And then we're going to just talk about how to have conversations about the filibuster in a really powerful way so that we can take this information back to folks who aren't necessarily in this space and who are busy living their daily lives and can't engage the way they would like to. And then we're going to talk about how we're going to move folks to action. Because again, all of this comes back to building the army that's going to force the change that we all seek to achieve. Okay. All right. So the icebreakers, I want folks you just drop in your chat, your names, your pronouns, the organization and city that you're in, and then think about one change that you want to achieve through your activism, right? What is the issue that brings you to this fight and keeps you running every day? Even though you're tired, even though you're grumpy, even though it may not pay what you needed to pay, right? What is it that brings you to this work? And if you could do anything in a blink of an eye, what is the one change that you would have, that you would affect through your activism? So go ahead and share that. I'll give you all a minute, less than a minute. And then we'll go ahead and jump in. Usually I would play a little John Coltrane as folks do this, but that's a little more complicated in these bigger trainings. Okay, now that folks have shared all of that information, we are family. So now we're going to talk about this in real, straightforward, honest terms, because that's what family does. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to click over to the next slide. All right, now governance. Let's just touch on what the basic definition for governance is. So governance is the act or process of governing or overseeing the control and direction of something, like a country, an organization. And the reality is governance is what happens. We spend a lot of time and energy on electing folks, to office, but not as much time as ensuring that they have the skills and the understanding of the system so they can govern effectively and fairly and equitably. And so governance really is about the structure and the policy, and it's much longer lasting and long standing than a president or a senator, right? The bills that are passed, the way that they legislate, it continues on beyond them. And the filibuster is a prime example of something that of a governance tool that exists and persists long after its creators have established it, right? And so as we think about governance, right, we have to think about how we use that to tap into how the votes that we fight to engage and to direct, how that translates into the actual change we want. Because we elect people because we want them to go in and represent our interests, right? And a lot of times we see folks elected that have the desire, but not the understanding and the governance skills and tools and tactics to navigate the space to advance the work that we want to see advanced. Okay, so because this is the filibuster and Senate governance for newbies, we're going to do a quick civic engagement lesson for folks. Because if you went to school after I did, you probably didn't get a deep dive into civics. So we're just going to make up for the American school system right here. So we understand the Constitution is what oversees the three branches of government, our legislative, executive, and judicial branches, right? Today, we're focusing on the legislative branch, which is Congress, and it's broken up. It is a bicameral Congress, which means it is a two-house Congress. And so we have the Senate, which is the higher house, and then we have the House of Representatives. And so what happens is that our House of Representatives, they have a bill, they push it through, they vote on it, and then it goes to the Senate to determine whether or not it will be passed through both houses, right? And the Senate is largely where all of these bills, the progressive bills, go to die, right? If y'all will give me 1 second, I have an 8-year-old here who doesn't understand that mommy is working, so give me 1 second. Sorry, folks. Working in a pandemic has made things really interesting, and I appreciate all of your patience. So really, we're focusing on the legislative branch, but the executive branch is our president, our vice president, and their cabinet, right? And so they can execute executive orders. They can they can veto congressional bills that they don't deem necessary or fair or equitable, right? And then we have our judicial branch, our Supreme Court, and the infrastructure of the federal courts, which we see is a really important part of the infrastructure. And we saw that, I think, in under our last presidential term, how really important and underappreciated organizing in that space is. But today, as I said before, we are focused on the legislative branch because that is the branch that has cost us the most time when it comes to advancing our progressive agenda. So, just to recap, folks, now that we have an understanding of what governance actually looks like, it's important to note that, like in a democracy, our governance should reflect our democratic values. And what we're not seeing is our democratic values being reflected in the way that our governance is taking place in this country. It's largely dysfunctional, it's largely partisan, and it's incredibly harmful to most of us. It's not representative of the needs and the desires and the values of the American people. And so this is just another quick question that I want folks to figure out. I want you to think about this. What does democracy mean to you? Because what you think democracy means and it looks like, it determines how you think we should be governing in this country. So go ahead and think about that as we continue on, because it's going to be relevant as we start to dive deeper into the filibuster and its impact. All right, and if you see me looking away, I have two screens. So I'm still here with you all. I'm just making sure that I can see because my eyes have gotten so bad, y'all, but it's all good. So let's talk about how Senate governance is broken, right? Because we know it's dysfunctional, but how does that translate into the sabotage of bills that have bipartisan support, right? let's look at the $15 minimum wage, right? It was dropped from the pandemic relief bill in the Senate in 2021. The Affordable Care Act, given the option for the public option for healthcare to give folks an opportunity to purchase affordable public market insurance, that was dropped in 2009 from the Affordable Care Act, right? The DREAM Act, it died in the Senate. It's been killed in the Senate multiple times under Mitch McConnell. And the For the People Act, which is HR Bill 1, Senate Bill 1, which is the democracy reform bill that we need in order to right the wrongs that have chipped away at our democracy. And it died in the Senate in 2019 and 2020 and that Congress, right? And then we have the Climate Action Now Act, which is clearly something that we have to address because it not only impacts our country, it impacts the future of our world, right? And that died in the Senate in the 2019-2020 session, right? Expanded background checks for gun purchases. We are the only first world country in the world that consistently sees mass shootings. And we fail to address gun reform. Not because Americans don't want it. There's bipartisan support for it, but because there are interests that impede on these bills advancing so that we can protect ourselves, our children, and just ensure that folks are qualified to have a weapon. And so you can see, right, this isn't any just one sector that's being impacted by us. Progressive issues, not even progressive issues, common sense legislation is being killed in what we call Mitch McConnell's graveyard, right? And so now that we have been able to shift, it's important to know that there's still, even though we've taken the House, even though we have the majority in the Senate, the filibuster is still empowered to end all of this, right? And that is where we come in, because now that we understand this and we have at least leveled the playing field a bit, we need to work to take the filibuster off the field. So as we continue, I know this is just a screenshot of some of the issues that have been stopped by the filibuster and by our dysfunctional Senate. Think about some more. Think about the issues that matter to you that you've watched be impacted, right? And keep those in your mind as we continue to go throughout the training. All right, so what's the filibuster, right? There's this idea, this Hollywood idea of like the filibuster, passionate legislators standing on the floor, talking until they lose their voices to defend a bill or the interests of their constituents. But the reality is the filibuster is something entirely different. And so we have a phenomenal video that we're going to play for you all that was created by Color of Change that gives you the really, really just like the nitty gritty of its inception and how it's been weaponized and how it continues to exacerbate the dysfunction of our Senate. So if we could go ahead and play that video.
The Jim Crow filibuster, the tool that gives guys like this the power to single-handedly kill legislation that can help you, your family, and your friends live better, safer lives. It was used to give more power to slave states before the Civil War, to deny minimum wage increases, to delay civil rights protections, to stop the Voting Rights Act, and to block making lynching a federal crime. Seriously. They say, but reforming the filibuster would erase bipartisanship. Actually, it's the filibuster that's holding bipartisanship back. Consider immigration reform like the DREAM Act and universal background checks for gun purchases. Both had bipartisan support to pass, if not for, you guessed it, the Jim Crow filibuster. It doesn't have to be this way. We can make Congress work for us, but that push starts with us, the people. And it starts right now.
And so, as you learned in the video, right, like the filibuster is just like many things,
the tool
rooted
that gives
in
guys like
white
this
supremacy
the power to
and oppression. And it's super important to recognize that what something is rooted in will always manifest in the fruit, right? And so let's not forget that the filibuster, although it was created to historically reinforce white supremacy, it has now evolved to oppress the majority, right? The shared interest of Americans is being sabotaged by something that initially was designed to support white supremacy and enslavement. And so that saying that if they come for one, they will come for all really should resonate here, because the filibuster is a prime example of something being used to oppress one group, then morphing into something that is used to oppress the majority, right? So let's not forget how it started. And I'd recommend that folks, you check out, Demos did a phenomenal report on the filibuster, and just the way that it's been really weaponized to prevent us from advancing the interests of the many, right? So keep this in mind as we continue to dive into this. Let's talk a bit about how the use of the filibuster has exploded, right? So after President Obama was elected, we saw a huge spike in the use of the filibuster, right? To sabotage many bills, including healthcare, and gun reform, but also to force through bills that are incredibly harmful and only supported by the minority, which we'll see represented in the next slide, right? So think about this, right? Think about the issues that we were fighting for between 2007 and 2015, and anything that failed, it's very likely that the filibuster was the reason that bill, that issue was silenced. Now, we already know that the filibuster is a tool of white supremacy, but even worse, well, you don't get much worse than white supremacy, but to make it even worse, the filibuster is fundamentally anti-democratic, right? So let's just look at a map of the country. Most Americans live in the states that are highlighted in yellow. We have 22 senators representing the majority of Americans. There are 78 senators representing 48% of America's population, more than three times as many that represent 52% of America's population. And the Senate, which is already unrepresentative by design, is exacerbated by the filibuster, because then these 78 senators can block anything that is supported by the majority of the country. And we've seen that. We've seen it many times over. And so what does this mean? This means that the filibuster, even just by existing, right, it goes beyond the bills that are actually blocked and killed by the filibuster. It narrows the limits of what even gets to the floor. And so that means that if there's a gun reform bill that we can't even get to the floor, that means we can't even have a conversation. We can't even push a bill to the floor to address it, because it's already been killed by the filibuster, right? And so this is it's frustrating, but we have hope. As stressful as this may be, let's just recognize that the tide is turning. And here's just another example of how the filibuster is fundamentally anti-democratic, right? It allows the minority, the very small minority, to set the agenda, right? And the comparison here is California has 39 million people and Wyoming has a little over 500,000. Wyoming gets 3 electoral votes per 194,000 Wyomingites. And California has 55 electoral votes for each 725,000 folks. California gets 1 electoral vote, and so does Wyoming. So you can see how unfair that is to the voices of Californians and to the interests of the majority. So this is a very real thing that we have to contend with, and we've seen repeatedly, right, throughout even recent history, how this has been used to block our interests. But no more, y'all. Because last year we saw that Americans voted in record numbers. And we have to see if we're going to actually see the changes that we voted for. And that means it's time for us to defend democracy and to fix the Senate. Now, what does that look like? It looks like you going and having conversations with everyone you know and talking to them about the filibuster. Connect the dots between the filibuster and the issues that matter to them, right? So here are some tips for having effective conversations with folks. It's not about lecturing, right? We have a tendency in the progressive space to lead from an institutional knowledge and intellectual perspective. But the reality is people understand issues when you connect them to their lives, right? So how are we connecting the filibuster to someone's worldview and their lived experiences and allowing them to connect the dots while we foster that understanding, right? So first you have to figure out what actually matters to the person. What do they care about? Do they care about their kids? Do they care about their parents? Do they care about their ability to retire and actually be able to take care of themselves? Do they care about the climate? Do they care about gentrification? What is the issue that matters? And then find the way to connect the dots between the filibuster and how that impacts the progression of the issues that they care about. After that, once you've made these connections with the filibuster and the issues, you have to ensure that they have an understanding and they are equipped with identifying when misinformation comes up, because we know that misinformation is a tool that is largely used to scare people from taking action. And so you have to point them to resources. So Color of Change, Democracy Initiative. We have this training is just a shorter version of our hour-long training where we actually walk folks through how to have these conversations. And then we model them for them, right? So we identify how do you deal with someone who says, well, I heard the filibuster would prevent us from advancing certain things, right? How do you navigate that? And how do you direct folks to identifying truth and lies so that they can then go on and do that themselves, so they're not spreading that misinformation? And then you just kind of gauge how interested this person is in engaging in the fight. Are they super excited? Are they ready to go march on the Senate tomorrow? Or are they open to having conversations with other folks and maybe sending some emails, having conversations with folks in their network? And once you evaluate that, then you can make an appropriate ask. Someone who's willing to march on the Senate, invite them to your next lobby day, right? Encourage them to organize calls to your senators so that they're moving their networks to make demands and put pressure on the electeds who have say in how this fight goes forward, right? If there's someone who's just a little less emphatic about this, have them invite folks to a training. At least share that so that they can expand their understanding and they can give that information to other folks, right? It doesn't matter because there is a space at every level of this fight for folks to get plugged into. You just have to invite them to participate in a way that's comfortable for them, right? The idea is that we meet people where they are. We have to meet people where they are so that we can engage them in truly intentional ways and not transactional ways. So, once you've had these conversations, we want you to go out and practice, and then we want you to think about these three things. This is how you evaluate if your conversations were successful. Identify the best part of the conversation. Was there a moment where you saw the light switch on in the other person's eyes? Was there just an issue that really excited them and they realized that the filibuster is the reason that they haven't been able to advance gun control or climate justice or whatever the issue is that really lands on their heart, right? And then think about, okay, you know that you're going to make mistakes. What would help you be more effective? Is it more practice? Is it engaging with other folks? Is it doing a little more research? Participating in a democracy initiative training? Who knows? Whatever would make you more effective, just reflect on that and then continue to practice, because you get better with the more conversations you have, because you get a deeper understanding of how people are going to respond to what you're saying and to this information. So we want you to keep all of this in mind, right? As you go forth and conquer, because we have established a landscape in which we can move this forward and we can fire the filibuster. So here are just three examples of things that you can ask folks to do and that you can also engage in, right? You can sign a petition. I know the Democracy Initiative, we are pushing forth a petition calling on folks to support the end of the filibuster. We're engaging with Congress members, right? So Congressmember Sinema in Arizona, Congressmember Manchin in West Virginia, your Congress members, if you live in New York, you need to call on Chuck Schumer to encourage him to continue to pushing to end the filibuster. And wherever you are, engage your Congress members, see where they stand on the filibuster, and call them to action. And then, of course, again, I have to plug our trainings because we've worked really hard on them, and we really enjoy engaging with folks who don't necessarily come into the democracy space on how to engage in a way that is meaningful and appropriate for you. So you can reach out to us, send me an email, happy to or host an organizational training, or to engage with your members, right? So there's so many ways that you can plug in, because this fight is going to take all of us. We're so thankful that you all came and participated today. I hope that this was helpful for you. And if you want more resources, we also have a toolkit that we're sharing with folks that is a breakdown. It's a super, it's a deep dive into the filibuster and all things that we can do to engage on social media, to engage in our organizations, and to engage our networks. So we hope that you take this and run with it. And thank you for being here. Remember, democracy can only be for the people, by the people. Anything less than that is unacceptable. Thank you all for being here. We're excited to have you, and we look forward to engaging with you in the future.